But if you don't know as an attorney whether your client is going to test positive for drugs, or you know your client is going to test positive for drugs, why would you agree to that? And I just watch cases, and they order drug testing, boom, 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 like it's, like the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. It's just the way of the world.
Yeah, they ordered a drug test at my detention hearing.
Yeah.
And then it went all bad from
there. Did your attorney object to it?
She didn't really object to anything. She just told me I had to do everything they said.
Well, and that's a strategy. That's a strategy that some people use. And I'm not saying it's a bad strategy in every case. But if you don't know as an attorney whether your client is going to test positive for drugs, or you know your client is going to test positive for drugs, why would you agree to that? It's kind of like a societal thing. Well, you don't deserve your kids unless you test clean anyway. I don't care what the law says, and I don't care what stage of the case you're at. That's kind of the attitude I get a lot of times. And, a lot of people don't like me when I say, objection, the court doesn't have jurisdiction or doesn't have the power to order drug testing at this point in time. Now, the fact that because you didn't know, but it doesn't matter, ignorance is no excuse, right? That's what the law is. That's what the rule is. You didn't object. Your attorney didn't object. So guess what? You got to go take a drug test. And guess what? If it comes out bad, that's going to follow you for the rest of the case. And it could have been easily avoided. But you didn't know to say, Your Honor, I object. You don't have jurisdiction to do that yet. Now, at some point in the case, the judge does have the jurisdiction, but not at the detention hearing. In the old days, I used to make arguments, and this is what some smart judges would do. They would say, okay, Mr. Davis, how about this? I'll release the kids to your client, but your client has to agree to drug test. And of course, sometimes the client would drug test and test positive. Sometimes they drug test and they test clean. But it gave that assurance to a judge. If you're a judge and you're responsible for these kids, you want to have assurances. And you have to play to your audience, right? Because, I've witnessed over time some judges, making decisions and, going with the parent. And it turned out it was a nightmare. I remember one case that was kind of famous in LA County where a judge released some kids to a mother against the social worker's recommendation. And the mother, I think, jumped off the roof of a building in downtown Los Angeles with all the kids. And I think they had like 3 or 4 dead children. Guess what happened to that judge? Right? I mean, they drug him through the mud. All kind of hearings in Sacramento about how could he do this? Why did he do this? So, judges aren't off the hook. And if you're a judge and you don't know this person, are you going to take a chance? Your career, your reputation? I don't know. Those are just things that run through my mind if I were sitting as a judge. Like, can I really trust Cassandra? A lot of people think that there's a lot of corruption. Okay. And I know Miss G is, a fan of this theory. And it's good that she's not here today. But so I'll say that it's not corruption at all. It's, hey, I'm the judge. I'm responsible for these kids. You're not making me feel good about releasing the kids to you. Yeah. And you know, in the old days, not since COVID, but maybe online, you'd be sitting right there in front of the judge. And the judge will look at you. And I've never talked to anyone about this, but I'm sure if I were sitting there, I'd look at you and I'm going to think to myself, I wonder if I can trust Cassandra with these kids. You know, judges have to make decisions like that every day. So if you get judges making a lot of conservative decisions, now you know why, right? It wasn't corruption. It was they had a serious concern that wasn't alleviated. Now, is that the law? In a lot of cases, probably not. But just like that judge with the 3 dead children, you know, if he had to make that decision over again, would he make the same decision? I don't know. Right? So that, you know, think about those things. So when you go to court, think about, you got to give the judge a good feeling that you're going to take care of your kids. You know, forget the law. Everybody thinks it's just the law. No, 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 no. The judge was wearing a black robe, and we've given that judge a lot of power and discretion in these cases. Figure out how you're going to win your case. You know, people call me all the time, oh, the judge didn't do this, the judge didn't do that. And I'm always thinking, well, what did you do to show the judge that you should have your kids? Nothing. I should win because CPS didn't follow the law. Okay, that's not a good strategy. It's a strategy. It's not a good strategy. And I tell this to Miss G all the time. Look, the time to complain about corruption and wrongdoing social workers or lying social workers will come. But let's get the kids back first. That's the number one goal. Get the kids back or get them with, you know, a friendly relative. But get them someplace that they know. Because it's a hell of a thing for you to be, you know, a little kid. You're taken from your mom and you just end up at somebody's house that you don't know. You know, and I've heard many stories. It's not always a good thing. You know, when we really think about it, maybe we should have just left the kids with the parent, you know, because what they're now going through in foster care is worse. Right? You don't know what's happening at that stranger's house. You don't know. Sometimes it's good stuff. Sometimes it's really bad stuff. So at that detention hearing, make sure that your attorney makes the argument, let's get these kids with relatives. There's a statute, a law in California. It's Welfare and Institutions Code section 309. It requires the social worker to do an investigation to place children with relatives and family friends. They call them nephrons. All right. And it actually puts the burden on the social worker to do the investigation. A lot of social workers come to court and say, oh, the mother and father didn't tell me any relatives that could take the kids. In a lot of cases, they never even asked the mother or father. But it's just like they believe that if the father or the mother doesn't bring it up, oh, well, we're going to keep them in foster care. And that's actually not the law. The law is that the social worker has to affirmatively go out and search for relatives. Now, one of the ways to do that is to ask the parents, hey, tell me your relatives. You know, the kids' aunts, uncles, adult siblings, grandparents. Tell me about those. You know, and they actually have to go search for these people. Years ago, the city and county of San Francisco lost a big lawsuit on this very issue. And they're the only county, and I've represented people in a lot of counties, they're the only county that do this. They actually hire an outside service on every case that researches the background of all parents. And they produce a computerized report to the judge. Like, here are all the relatives that we could find. We called them. and they said they wanted the kid or they didn't want the kid. The interesting thing is, one of the things I found out up there is that sometimes when they call and they don't want to release the child to a relative, they call you and say, hey, you're grandma and grandpa, right? Yes. Well, just want to let you know the kid has been taken into CPS custody, and we were thinking, you might want to keep the kids, but I don't think it's a really good idea because it's expensive, or you have to provide medical insurance, or you have to keep the kid with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or, 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 they do things to convince you not to take the child. So they get to keep the child in foster care, even though they did the report on all relatives. I bet if you interviewed parents on their case and asked them while their kids are in foster care, strange foster care, how many of your relatives were interviewed for possible placement? When it's all that can be found, very few are. Very few are. Now, there are some social workers that are big time pro relatives. Okay, so I'm not saying that it happens in every case, but it happens in a lot of cases. Happens in a lot of cases where I'm called. First thing I ask people, I say, where are your kids? Well, what do you mean? I said, well, who are they living with? Foster parents. These are people that have cases open for months. I said, well, aren't there